Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
Welcome to What? Spoilers. Winter's Heart, chapter, I forget.
18.
Right. So last chapter was pink ribbons, but this chapter features the burning of the pink ribbons. So it feels like pink ribbons too, but it is actually technically called an offer.
This chapter is legal to date. The previous one was not.
That is way too apt for this particular situation.
Yeah, a little bit. So yeah, there's some weird, as always, the continuation of the pink ribbons, weird sexual innuendo, Matt saying he's okay with it, even though he's not. There's a lot going on with the legality of this relationship.
It's covering turf that you've heard us cover before, so we will attempt to be brief.
Yes. Yeah. It is interesting, though, his little, I'm going to use this in verbal quotes, affair with Aludra. Yeah. Chapter 18, an offer. And our symbol is the Seanchan helmet, because, again, we're in Ebou Dar with all the Seanchan. What's the offer?
I think it's Tuon's offer to buy the Ashendari for 10 times the price he paid.
Oh, right. And he's like, a fool would pay it once, and...
Right, because the cost was his life.
Right, he died. Yeah, you could...
And she's already tried to buy him, like, his current life, and now she's like, hey, can I buy something that you paid for with a previous iteration of your life, Matt, Cat, Cawthon? So that's what I assumed.
No, okay, I like that. That is an offer that is made. The days after the golem tried to kill him settled into rhythms that irritated Matt no end. The gray sky never altered except to give rain or not. There was talk in the streets of a man being killed by a wolf not far outside the city, his throat ripped. No one was worried, just curious. Wolves had not been seen close to Ebou Dar in years. Matt worried. City people might believe a wolf could come that close to city walls, but he knew better. The golem had not gone away. Harnan and the other Red Arms stubbornly refused to leave, claiming they could watch his back, and Vannon refused without reasons, unless a muttered comment that Matt had a good eye for fast horses was supposed to be one. He spat after he said it, though. Rizelle, her olive face pretty enough to make a man swallow, her big dark eyes knowing enough to dry his tongue, inquired about Oliver's age, and when he said close on 10, she looked surprised and tapped her full lips thoughtfully. But if she changed anything in the boy's lessons, he still came away from them bubbling equally over her bosom and the books she read him. Matt thought Oliver would almost have given up his nightly games of snakes and foxes for Rizelle and the books. And when the lad ran out of the rooms that had once been Matt's, Tom often slipped in with his harp under his arm. By itself, that was enough to make Matt grind his teeth, only that was not the half. And then there's quite a bit more about Tom and Beslin slipping out and having fun. And being political, I suppose, rather than having fun. I don't know, for Tom that might be the same thing.
Tom is having fun, Beslin is deadly serious.
Yeah, exactly. So, we've got the golem outside the city walls. Any idea why he's not coming in after Matt? Is he just as scared of the medallion? Is it the orders to avoid being noticed? Like, it's not a terribly obvious reason why he's staying away and not coming full bore after Matt.
I always assumed it was the crowds, that Matt's strategy of just not being alone for more than a few seconds at a time was effective because the golem is not existentially motivated to go after him. It's just sort of obligated to, but he can hurt it, and he's not really being an easy target. And that, I never thought that it was anything more than that, just sort of like a general reluctance and Matt being smart about how to avoid it.
And just, and he wanting to be noticed. And the golem wanting to avoid being noticed.
Exactly. If he's never able to be where someone could attack him or they wouldn't notice, like, what's the goal I'm going to do? It can barely stalk him at that point, much less attack him.
Right. And then another, let's go. I'm digging into it as I always do. Vannon as a Demandred red herring. He just refused without reasons. Yeah, he's not going to bother justifying anything. He's just hanging out. He's there to follow Matt and watch him. Doesn't matter what Matt's doing. Demandred's going to be there to sabotage it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. It fits. It fits.
Mm.
Like, but it also fits with the Harnan who isn't deep on dread. Like, it's the best red herring because it works every time, both ways. Like, none of this is inconsistent with either interpretation. It's terrible. It's like those things in the Dan Brown book, the words that you can read upside down and right side up, whatever the word for that is.
Oh, sure. When you rotate them 180 degrees, they look exactly the same.
Yeah, no, they're not called ciphers. There's a different word for it, like an ambigram or something like that.
Yeah, it feels like
there's a word for it.
Yeah, it feels like a weird made up word that Dan Brown made up, but it's not.
No, it's a thing.
I know.
It's not a Dan Brown thing. Let me just see, am I right about that? Yes, ambigram. Ambigram. It's a calligraphic design that has several interpretations as written. It was coined in 83. They're usually visually symmetrical words, and when flipped, they remain unchanged, or they mutate to reveal another meaning. Those
are cool.
Yeah, so this plot is like an ambigram of a red herring, like, versus just character development. It works either way.
Mm-hmm. I think it was that sketch drawing where sometimes it's an old lady and sometimes it's a young woman.
Yeah, or Duck Rabbit.
Yeah. Those optical illusions, yep.
Totally.
Vannon is an optical illusion. If you look right, he looks a lot like Demondred. But yeah, no, I mean, he respects Matt, and he respects his luck, and Vannon cares about horses, and Matt has an eye for horse flesh. Like, we know that for sure.
Mm-hmm. It's a silly reason, but, like, leadership is a fickle thing.
Right.
People don't always have good articulations for why they want to follow someone. They just do.
And, like, he might just notice the luck, and he might just be, justifying, like, oh, yeah, no, I want to stay around this guy.
Clearly, he has an eye for luck.
Right.
Vannon does.
So do you want to talk about Rizal?
Yeah, as I say, the thing that I noticed in this was that this is when Rizal asks about Oliver's age. I was convinced that this happened sooner. I was sure we had already seen this live. I know we've referenced it many times when talking about Matt and Oliver. This is where it happens. I was surprised by that. I don't know if anyone else was surprised by that. I was surprised by that. And isn't that kind of late in the whole, like, Oliver being weird thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's why I think she was more okay with him, like, resting his head on her breast and all that kind of stuff, is because she thought he was, like, a baby. She did not realize that he was actually 6, because he is tiny for his age. So she
10.
must... What did I say?
6.
Right, so he thinks he's 6, right? Mm-hmm. So he's tiny for 10, and he looks 6, because that's what Rizal thinks he is. She thinks he's like a little baby, and it turns out he's only a couple of years out of puberty. Like, there's a big difference in her mind between those two things, and I feel like that's why she was surprised. However, the lack of change of behavior is a little weird to me.
Yeah, I don't... But, like, also, like, it's just that Oliver isn't disappointed by what happens.
Right.
We don't actually know, like, if she changed anything about the boys' lessons, it doesn't change the emotional takeaway he's having.
Right.
She very well could have changed her behavior in ways to be more appropriate that didn't disappoint what he was actually getting out of it.
Right.
Because she, like, understood why he was saying those inappropriate things. I want to believe well of Rizal. I really want to believe that Rizal is the one person with decent morals in this entire Ebou Dar cast.
Mm-hmm. Keep on dreaming.
I can't. It's weird. But I mean, my thought is just that she wasn't really, like, taking him seriously before, so she continues to not take him seriously now. And
right.
like, it's... His innocence, I think, is the only reason why we can even give her a shred of the benefit of the doubt here. It's just because he doesn't know what he's doing, as we've discussed. It's just... And then Tom just goes in and it's like, yes, she sleeps with boys through grandpas. It's so cool and great. What a sexually liberated city. And it's just like, what are you saying, Robert? What are you saying?
He really wants a big boom woman who will sleep with anyone to be around. And that's kind of, it seems like, what he's saying. And I like, as much as
the palace slut.
Yeah. I mean, hey, some places you have the palace, joker or jester, and here you have someone else who's juggling balls. Okay, moving on.
Okay, yeah.
Let's go. Okay, my other Vannon Demandred red herring thing is, of course, the fact that he is basically a doctor. He's capable of dealing with wounds, and what horse thief is good with wounds? Really? What? No. Clearly Forsaken level knowledge.
No. This is a perfectly believable line.
Fine,
Literally, doctors and farriers have been the same person for centuries.
Yeah, but Vannon's just a horse thief. He's not really...
He's also a farrier itinerantly.
Okay. He
claims the trade of being a farrier. He's worked at that intermittently. And if you work with horses, you know the basic principles of mammal anatomy. Like, if muscles and blood are coming out, stitch closed. Like,
I guess that is pretty simple. Yeah.
Especially if you want to do, like, sneaky things where you can't go to a healer and you have to patch yourself up.
Or the horse that you stole.
Yeah. I always thought that this was a very believable line. I have a hard time imagining Demandred sullying his hands with something as disgusting as, like, manual healing. He's a general. He's not a healer.
Yeah. It would be better if they like were healed instead of just like obviously just their wounds patched up.
Yes, if he was a miraculously good healer, yes, but the willingness to just get in there and get bloodied, like no,
fair enough.
Only Semirhage wants blood of all the Forsaken.
The next little bit I have is about Julian sneaking into the palace to see Thera, which we talked about in the last episode, and again is nothing particularly interesting. It just ends with the line, "Women did strange things to a man's head."
I liked the line before that sort of fever had to burn itself out before a man could think straight. Like, there's a futility in dealing with someone else's passion. If someone else has passionately decided on something, they're the only one who's going to decide that that's over. Like, nothing you say is going to help. And I appreciate that, like, recognition, but... whatever.
I wonder how much of this is deliberate foreshadowing for what Matt's going to be dealing with Tuon. Like, just these irrational decisions he makes, getting stuck in bad places. The fact that he just becomes obsessed with Tuon.
He becomes obsessed with Tuon because a weird snake person told him he would marry the daughter of the Nine Moons. I don't think there's much parallel to Julian falling in love with a traumatized woman who is in the retinue of Suroth.
I would disagree. I think that certainly the prophecy points Matt at Tuon. I think Matt falls in love with Tuon.
But do you think that he falls in love with her and then gets obsessed, or gets obsessed and then falls in love? Why does he get obsessed?
Well, I mean, I think it's a little bit of both, right? It's the more I court this person, the more I see just how badass she is.
Sure.
And I think you can track that by how he talks about how attracted he is to her. Because here in the beginning, he sees her and he's like, wouldn't touch her with 10-foot pole, right? Like, no desire.
Yeah, I've never thought of kissing her.
Right,
yeah,
right.
For sure.
Which, of course, means he is thinking about kissing her, but...
But the only reason that he gives a shit about courting her is because he thinks he has to marry her. Like, the whole reason he gives a shit is because of this prophecy.
Yes, but in the same way that I think that, and this is something Jordan does frequently with Min, right? She doesn't fall in love with Rand until the prophecy says you're going to fall in love with this person. And then she gets obsessed with him and has to, like, it's the prophecy that points her at him, but she does fall in love with him eventually. And I think the same thing happens with Matt.
It's so weird with her because she says she sees him and she knows she's going to fall in love with him. And then the next time we talk to her, she's like, I'm in love with him. And it's like, what? Matt, you see it happen. It takes time.
Does it? Like, again, this is where the time, Min's gap and the amount of time she spends with Rand is actually...
That's true. That's a giant time jump between books 1 and 2 and 3. That's a good point.
So, whereas here, Matt's meeting Tuon, last battle's in like a month and a half. Like, his entire relationship with Tuon, from meeting her now until the last battle... Not that. I mean, he courts her in the caravan, but again, the way time is so compressed in these last books, It's fast. It's faster than it seems, because it does seem like they spend a lot of time in the circus, because the circus feels like it takes for fucking ever. But it's not that long. It's not that long.
That's a good point.
It's pushed along significantly by the prophecies.
Yeah. And then, we've got farmers are going to be hard to put down because they're going out with crafts and livestock, preparing to put down roots. Just Seanchan.
Right. There's the whole big description about Seanchan. We actually get the most full description of the Seanchan animals, I think. Torm, Krolm, Sreddit, Torokin, and Rockin are all described in this paragraph.
Mm-hmm. It's very cool.
Torm, the bronze-scaled cats the size of horses and with 3 eyes. Krolm are the ostrich-like things that have fur and are pretty deadly.
And ears.
Yeah.
And scary. No like.
I kind of imagine them as velociraptors, basically. With beaks. Yeah.
No liking.
Sreddit, which are obviously just elephants.
Dish elephants. That's right. It.
Yeah. Maybe closer to mammoths was maybe they're bigger. Was it my only thought? Maybe they have tusks.
They're not woolly though.
No. So yeah, I think they're just straight up elephants. I was just trying to.
Yeah, I don't think they're changed at all. I think it's just like the weirdness is that they're not changed.
And then Rockin and Torokin, which are just dragons.
Wyverns?
Is that the right way to say that word?
Yes.
Or is it worm?
I thought worms and wyverns were different. I don't know. I know that there's a lot of different taxonomy when it comes to things people want to call dragons, and people can get very offended if you call something with the wrong number of legs a dragon. That's
a double where I learned something by reading it and then assumed I pronounced it wrong, and then it turns out I pronounced it right.
When in doubt, say dragon.
Yeah. So basically, yeah. So we've got dragons and bigger dragons flying around.
Yeah, aircraft carrier dragons and fighter jet dragons.
Again, some more Seanchan background about how the soldiers are veterans because they fight in these constant rebellions and revolts. They're not these, recruits that just get trained and then sent off to be, he can tell the difference between someone who's a veteran and someone who's not. Which all this just enforces, the Seanchan are going nowhere. You can't get the farmers out. The soldiers are battle-hardened veterans. There's no chance of undoing the return.
No.
You are going to have to live with that.
Yeah. Yeah, the indelible contact has been made at this point. And we also get that in enforcing the whole Seanchan as an empire full of rebellion. It is not unified. It is not cohesive. It is decree and imperialism and not a happy fun time any more than the Westlands or Shara are.
Which makes sense to me if the Crystal Throne can work compulsion on the higher ups, that you have this sort of very loyal structure in terms of the government, but you can never do that to everybody.
No, you can kill them constantly and they will constantly rebel in a new way. That's, yeah, the compulsion can't possibly get down to the mob level.
Interesting little bit of political stuff I hadn't realized earlier is the Altarans.
Yes. I also had not really noticed it until I did my notes.
Yeah, the apparently, obviously we talk about Tylan being in charge of Ebou Dar and how her rule doesn't really go more than a couple of days' ride, which means there's a bunch of Altarans who are technically supposed to be loyal to their country and queen, but the queen has no authority over them because they're from far away.
And hasn't in generations.
Yeah, they're basically foreign troops.
Yeah, they are vassal states who chafe under the yoke. They are independent lords who are their own kings in all but name. These are not Altarans. And these are people who have been giving Tylan and her family and her ruling class all kinds of headaches for generations. These are people with long-standing political and military grudges and history and feuds.
And the Seanchan are like, oh, you're all Altarans. Here you go. Have fun.
There are 0 examples of this happening in the real world, by the way.
No, we've never had an imperialist society go in and combine 2 groups that absolutely hated each other and force them together, causing all sorts of political violence and other sorts of problems. Africa.
Middle East. North America. Just never happened.
Nope.
This is not common. You're all the same. It's fine. There are no examples.
None. I can't think of a single other one.
That's literally the basis of so many genocides. I mean, I just listened to the series of podcasts about partition, India, Pakistan. I mean, the border sort of showed up as opposed to an imperial army, but still, I mean, it's the same. I can see how Altara's history has gone very, very badly and is not going anywhere good as a result of the Seanchan invasion. It's good stuff. This is fine. This is absolutely fine. So yeah, Thailand doesn't like that. The fellows from inland don't like that. The guards don't like that. It's generally slightly tense, except when the Death Watch guards come around, because they're just suddenly here for some reason that makes no sense and is absolutely contextless. Can't think of why 100 Death Watch guards and a bunch of Ogier would suddenly be here. Super mysterious.
500 Death Watch guards and 100 Ogier.
Numbers. But yeah, it's... They tend to cool tempers because they're so fucking scary.
Right. No one wants to be the, head that gets pounded down, the nail that's sticking out, right? Like, that is not what people want when the Death Watch guards come around. Why are they around? Tuon, right? Yes, they're guarding Tuon, is the shred it in the room.
Yes. I love the description of the gardeners, that they looked at a man as though wondering whether he needed pruning of a few limbs. Just, mwah. Masterful sentence, no notes.
It has to make me wonder if the gardeners of Seanchan ended up basically fighting back, that maybe some humans tried to wipe them out and they decided that they weren't going to have that. And so you end up with this group of gardeners who have to fight back against... Because we know that, here's some wild speculation. The Blade was destroyed in Seanchan, right? So... The Seanchan took all of their portal world creatures, tongue twister, that we just heard about, and took them to the Blight and wiped them out, right? And so I can imagine that a overzealous Seanchan empress or emperor says, well, I've wiped out those weird creatures. I should go wipe out the Ogier. And somehow through bloody battle, or perhaps they came to the Ogier's aid and wiped out the people who were attacking them. But I can imagine the Ogier becoming a much more militant group of people through protecting themselves from the people of Seanchan after the blight creatures were wiped out. That maybe they turned on the other weirdest creatures on the continent, which were Ogier.
The Seanchan are very against people that are outside of their order. I can definitely see getting whipped up into a xenophobic rage against the concept of Ogier, and the Ogier being like, no, not happening.
And then I can see perhaps an emperor or empress dies, the next one takes over, forgives them. That leads to some sort of pact where the Ogier swear to protect her, which leads to the Ogier gardeners.
Yeah, some sort of like, if you help me win the throne, I promise we'll never do a genocide. We'll have a sacred pact between our throne and your people. Like, there's a lot of potential Seanchan history that could go with that. Or that maybe the gardeners come from the fact that maybe the Ogiers had to be militant before Seanchan even showed up, and they kind of arrived on the continent and found the Ogier kind of like holding it down, and we're like, hey, we should be friends. And like, that's part of how they were able to take down the Blight. Maybe like, there's so much potential fanfic here. How did they get violent? How? And why did they choose to use that violence for the Empire? Why are they not anti-imperialist? You'd think Ogier would be anti-imperialist, but
and why for the Empress in particular?
Right. Why not anything? It's because they don't seem to be interacting with the Crystal Throne. It seems to be a whole different thing. And like, does compulsion work on Ogier? Maybe. I guess actually, no, we did headcanon that it must, because Lanfear's compulsion light worked on Loyal and Great Hunt. We did headcanon that. We
did, but, I imagine a single Terran maybe only works on humans, right? Like, even if compulsion in general could work on Ogier, the Crystal Throne might not. Just a thought.
Yeah, fair.
Or it might, and might be why we have these militant Ogier supporting the Empress herself as opposed to something else like peace or separatism or just being part of the army.
I mean, we never get to even talk to one of the Ogier, of the gardeners. We never get in their heads. We never see Loyal talk to one of them. They never talk to the Ogier leadership. They never talk to Rand. They just are in the background.
Mm-hmm. And I gotta say, this is one of the reasons we're spending so long on them right now is because we actually have one of the longest descriptions of the Seanchan Ogier that we're ever gonna get.
They look like Loyal, but they're as scary as Ashaman.
Right.
Those things are happening at once, and it's some cognitive dissonance. So yeah, Matt gets a bunch of rumors that are confusing and concludes that the world outside is full of shit happening.
Right.
Which is, yes, correct.
This is the rumors fade to myth part of Jordan's story, which is all the stuff and information coming into Ebou Dar is all rumored and mythed and messed up and weird.
Yeah, this is not even fading to myth. This is just the rumor part.
Right.
This is just pure rumor because we're talking really recent events, and he's trying to avoid news of Rand because Rand is the biggest piece of news, and he's getting all the color swirls. And there's just the series of different things we've seen as, again, almost recappy, but it's more about here's how rumors go from truth to fiction. They haven't yet faded to myth or anything yet, but this is just where truth becomes fiction.
Right. Here's a bunch of stories that, if you squint, look a lot like what you know has happened, but aren't exactly what's happened.
Mm-hmm. And the Seanchan take it all very seriously. We're over here oh, yes, legends fade to rumors. And the Seanchan are taking every single thing very seriously and scurrying around like a kicked anthill.
This is where we go. The morning after the golem tried to kill him, Matt burned every last one of the long pink ribbons. The whole great wad of them in the fireplace as soon as Tylen left her apartments. He also burned a pink coat she had made for him, 2 pairs of pink breeches, and a pink cloak. Which, first of all, the description of that clothes is ridiculous.
Oh my god, it's so much. It's so much. It's just so much pink. I was obsessed with fuchsia as a small child, and that small child is cringing at how much pink he just described.
I also think it's him taking seriously it's time to go, right? The golem is after me. I am a sitting target. I'm healed enough to start making a go of it. I am burning my attachment. I'm burning this thing. Also, I think he, hates the pink. But
it's literally the day after she used it on him, too.
Right. Oh, okay. That's fair.
She hasn't had this stuff around for very long. The day the golem tried to kill him is the day she says, remember about the pink ribbons.
Right.
So I think it is a very specific reaction to, I just was made into the most humiliated rope bunny package that has ever existed, and I wish to never engage in rope play ever again in my life. Thank you.
Especially pink rope play, yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely the vibe I get, is that whatever she did to him was... I agree that it feels like a turning point. I mean, this is also the chapter where he starts to actually get his escape plan to work. But again, we've talked about he's being held here by Tuon's, the need for Tuon to arrive. And again, yesterday, the day the golem tried to kill him, he met her.
Right.
And so now things are able to start moving forward. He is able to find a room. He's able to burn the clothes. He's able to find his old clothes. Shit can move forward because now Tuon's in orbit.
And it's time for him to kidnap her. So he's got to get his shit together and ready to go.
Yeah. So I think this has less to do with Matt's personal journey with respect to his issues with Tylen and more to do with, no, Tuon's here. Let's go. Let's get.
Yeah. And then there's a whole line here where it says, Light, if need be, he would go with Luca and what he wore, which is, I think, what I was addressing earlier, which is you've got your luck. You don't need money. Just go. Go with Luca and make a break for it with the shirt on your back and the Ashendara in your hand.
I don't go with that. No. What I noticed here is that he feels relief in dressing himself in bright blue. His Overton window has been moved so far. He doesn't care if there's lace. He's fine with bright blue. It's oh my God, Matt, you would be mocking yourself from here till Sunday.
Right.
When you saw yourself in book one, you could see yourself right now.
Great Hunt Matt criticizing Rand for his fancy quote. Oh my gosh. Meanwhile, Matt's just at least it's not pink. That's his only thought right now.
Yeah. He is in a completely different frame of reference now. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he heads out. determined to search the city for a place to secrete his resources so he can make an escape with his stuff.
And without thinking, he ends up in front of the Wandering Woman.
Yeah, he just sort of stalks right up to it and decides, might as well start here, which is probably one of the least random randoms he's ever done, but, like, it's random enough.
Well, the Wandering Woman originally was random, right? Like,
Yes. Yes.
So his initial discovery of it.
So, yeah, I guess you're right. He's allowed to have just a touch of order. Just a tiny bit. Yeah. So, yeah, he heads in and we get to recap what it looks like and see how it's changed. Because, again, the Seanchan invasion has altered things, and the patronage is Seanchan now. So we get a lot of just descriptions of them and their clothes and their hair and their social dynamics.
I think Kharid is one of those guys sitting there.
I agree. We see some random person. And, yeah, I'm just like, it's got to be Kharid. That's got to be Kharid. Oh, yeah, a bluff-faced man with gray at his temples. He comes out of the Wandering Woman, a tall fellow in red and black armor. And he seems pleasant, and he's a Death Watch guard, and that's gotta be Kharid. That's gotta be Kharid. Has to be.
And I want to say there's a line later where Matt's like, I feel like I recognize this guy from, maybe I saw him somewhere, and it's like, probably outside of Satala Anan's inn.
That would totally make sense, yeah.
And the description of who's staying here, it's all the high-ranking nobles, it's, Death Watch Guard, it's all the people who are high Seanchan society.
Yeah, because this is the hotel that's right next to the convention center. So all of the, like, event staff and, like, panelists need to be close by, you know?
And the highest ranking do it, too, because they want to commute the least amount of time. And it's a nice hotel, right? It's also like...
Yeah, it's definitely the 5-star hotel of this area. And Suroth kind of insisted that everyone be close, I think. But, I mean, it's... Yeah, for sure. This is what happens when high-ranking nobility comes to town. Satala Anan's inn gets full up because it's booked out for months. It's like a complete pain in the ass for the locals.
And if you remember who Satala Anan is, or if you don't, she is a burnt-out Aes Sedai who used to work on Dreamweavers.
On Terran of all sorts.
That's right. She was just a Terran researcher. She wasn't the one who did the Dreamweaver.
Yeah, no, that's Corianne Nadil. She's dead by 400 years.
Right, no. So she burned herself out like 20 years ago, something like that.
70 years? 70? I always think it's 40. And then...
Because she's 70 years old.
Yeah, okay, so it was 40 years ago. 40 years ago, yeah, she doesn't remember the week prior to what she was working on, so nobody knows exactly what happened to her, but she just woke up essentially from a concussion, right? She went into a shock coma for a week, and when she came out of it, she was burned out and didn't remember the last week of her life. So
a lot of her motivation and her arrogance and her personality has to do with the fact that she used to be Aes Sedai and still kind of acts like it.
Yeah, she was a highly accomplished academic. The arrogance that comes with the intellectual accomplishments doesn't go away just because magic went away. But then she also, went on to make a whole life for herself, raising a family and being the business woman owning this inn. And she has a complete second life post academia now. Almost 2 lives, right? Because she's had a second career in her inn and she's raised a family. Her eldest daughters are like getting married. So her arrogance comes from a place of having done a lot.
And also her knowledge as well, right? Like, she has knowledge that an innkeeper should not have, and interests that an innkeeper should not have, right? She's interested in the kin and wants to make sure they got away safely from the Seanchan because she knows they're channelers. She's interested in Nynaeve and Elaine because they're channelers and of the White Tower, right? Her interest in all those people comes from her being formerly Aes Sedai.
Yes. And Matt really likes her, so when he catches her eye across the room, his momentary impulse to turn around and not even bother is taken away, and he is drawn into conversation with her, which is good, because otherwise I don't know where else he would have found a cubbyhole. And then Jolene would have been screwed, so this needed to happen.
Right. Because that's the foreshadowing for next chapter. Is that's how Matt gets involved in the rescuing of the Aes Sedai and all that kind of stuff. And that's basically what this chapter is setting up. Is he meets Satala Anan to hide all his stuff, and that's what gets him involved in freeing Jolene and Teslin.
Which also gets him involved with Domon and Egianan.
Right.
This is a very... Tuon arriving means that the dominoes can start falling. And this chapter and next chapter are very much some big domino falls that happen.
Yeah, and because Matt's been in a holding pattern, both in terms of, the fact that he wasn't in a book, but also in terms of actual time, right? He's been healing. He's been laying around doing nothing interesting when it comes to plot.
Yep. And suddenly everything's very interesting.
Now we're getting interesting because we're reading about it. I think it's really important that Satala Anan is basically saying, many a young man or woman has a final fling as a pretty, pampered and showered with presents before settling down. I think that's important because it means that, of course, Matt's going to settle down with the next woman he gets with.
Yeah.
Because he's being a pretty. That's the final fling before he has to settle down.
So this was the other thing we were talking before we turned to recording about. There were multiple things I thought had been discussed earlier. Rizal was one. This was the other. This is the first time that Matt is actually having the custom of pretties explained to him. Like, I could have sworn that we had this discussion earlier. I could have sworn that we saw this on the page sooner because we've talked about it so many times. We talk about how it's just a cultural misunderstanding and all this stuff, and he doesn't get informed of what the culture is until now.
No.
Like, in case anyone was thinking that this cultural misunderstanding bullshit is any kind of defense, this is when Matt is being explicitly told this is what the custom is. Like, this is when us in the narrative are being told it. Like, he has been through so much to only now be getting told what exactly the context he's in.
And I think the key is a pretty leaves when she chooses, right? You get to leave when you want. Tylan.
No, when she... She's
saying a man or a woman has a final fling as a pretty, but you see a pretty leaves when she chooses. She is for the pretty.
I have been misinterpreting the emphasis in that sentence for years. I always thought that she was referencing Tylan, and I was very side-eyeing the text. And
yeah, that's a man or a woman type. So she's referring to a pretty as a she there. A generic she.
Yeah. So okay. So furthering my point that Tylan has been keeping Matt in the dark about what this custom is.
And absolutely violating the custom, right? This is and Beslin saying she's going too far. Here's Talanan saying, hey, you should choose when you get to leave. She shouldn't be keeping you there against your will. Like, all of that is very, very clear that Tylan is violating even her own custom.
Right. And also, everybody knows, and no one's saying anything, but by the way, the whole city knows that Tylan is abusing you by our own standards.
And that's what power gets you. I mean, how many powerful people in our current society can we say we know have abused people, and yet there's no consequences for them?
We don't have that kind of time.
No, we really don't. The obvious one that I'll bring up, which is only because he's being prosecuted, is Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, that
years
was my mind
and years. Yeah.
I was just listening to last week's Behind the Bastards was about what they titled the Jeffrey Epstein of the fashion world, and I'm forgetting his name now, but yeah.
Who was the gymnast doctor? Or was it the figure skating doctor who got, hundreds
the guy
of women?
That abused all of the
all
gymnasts that he was taking care of. Yeah, Simone Biles among them.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly what power gets you. And this is one of my not favorite Satala Anan moments, because she's like, yeah, so you're being sexually abused and we all know that, but I gotta say, you're getting some pretty sweet clothes out of it. Show me that ass.
Right.
I'm like, what the fuck, woman? You've been through so much. You know people so well. You know these customs. And you go from, sucks you're being abused. Also, I would like to see the goods.
Well, while you're being abused, show off a little bit.
Add to the humiliation, add to the exploitation, add to the trauma, add to the people he can't trust. And I mean, the color flooding his face is sheer fury. He's not blushing. He is mortified.
Yeah.
He got no sleep last night while being mortified, and now he's out trying to plot his escape. And what is the cost for his escape? More sexual exploitation. He's literally trying to get out of this abusive situation, and the price to get out is to do more debasement.
Yeah.
We have seen that story so many times with tragic string music and running mascara. But it's funny when it's Matt because he was dressed in pink.
Yeah, and I will say again, I think Jordan is doing his best to try and show how wrong it is. Right? He's not holding this up and being like, isn't it great that Matt's being abused, right? I don't think he's doing that.
No.
I really do think he's saying this is what sometimes men get abused and they go through a lot of disbelief, a lot of lack of help, a lot of like, you know, I think he's trying to put up a mirror for men to look, you know, abusive men to look in the mirror and see what they're doing. And I don't know. I try and give him a lot of credit for what he's trying to do here.
No, and I mean, he says it was supposed to be a humorous role reversal. Harriet said, yeah, this is cringy, but all right. Like, there's a lot to critique about making it a role reversal that is humorous, but like, no, RJ is imperfectly decrying this.
Yeah.
And it's really rough to see how badly it's done while knowing that his intentions were pointed at the right thing.
I think for me what it is, it's hard to see characters that I'm supposed to like and enjoy and see as good guys ignore and ridicule Matt for what's going on.
But I mean, you know, same in our real lives, right? Like, we all know people that do terrible things, and we've either never been privy to that or we've chosen to not know that that's happening. Mm-hmm. Like, this is a very relatable thing.
Yes.
But it's too relatable. It's too realistic.
I guess that's the point, is like he's creating a very relatable, realistic situation. And it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, it's because it's not funny. But that was the way that RJ thought he could make that conversation move forward. Sure. It's like he knows that this thing needs to be talked about, but that was the way he thought he could do it. And it's like,
it was with humor. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that was a thing of, you know, it's not often where I say, well, it's a product of its time. And this is one of those few times where I'll be like, humor around male rape for a long time was really the only way to talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard now. Mm-hmm. How many years later, right? Like,
yeah, we're not perfect about it by any means.
We're not perfect about fucking anything, but yeah, it's really frustrating to have this generally admirable character, Satala Anan, who's like a very all-knowing. She's the adultier adult, right?
Right.
Like, you're looking for an adultier adult. Satala Anan is that person because she's got the Aes Sedai vibes, and then she just.
But at the same time, she has that thing that no Aes Sedai has, which is practical lived experience.
Right, as a bartender, no less. Like, she's been running a hospitality joint. Like, she should know better. She's enough of a study of human interactions. Like, but it's Ebou Dar. It's fine.
Right. And he does have a cute butt, so, you know, that makes it okay.
Yeah, it's very okay if they're cute. God.
So she gives him, at least she does help him. She gives him a place to store his clothes and a place to store his gold, right? She's like, it's not right. You're being abused. Let me help. Let me give you what I can. I can't sneak you out, but what I can do is give you a place to store your things so that when it is time for you to go, you're not broke.
Well, and I mean, Matt isn't asking for a way to get out. It's not like she's giving him a subpart. Like, he's literally asking for a spot to stash his stuff.
Right.
He will ask her for a way out later. He is going to ask if she's going to have the boats available, but that is later.
And in a lot of ways, I feel like this is accurate advice for trying to get out of an abusive relationship, right? Make sure you stash away some money and a go bag so that when you need to and you have an opportunity, you can go and you're not broke and you don't have to go crawling back to the person.
Right, because just walking out the door with your Ashendari and the clothes on your back isn't actually a solid plan.
Unless you're lucky as hell.
And have no one who's depending on you.
Yeah.
And then I just want to get mad at Tylan for a quick second for putting Matt's clothes in a place where they would get damaged by mildew. Fine, take his clothes until he finds them. But could you at least do him the respect of putting them somewhere where they won't get damaged?
No, because then they would have been found. Because he would have looked in all those places. They had to look in some place that was, you know, they weren't going to check. They weren't going to.
She's just trashing his shit because money can buy you whatever the fuck you want.
Right. She bought him all replacement clothes. That's fine.
Returning to Rand ranting about his boots getting taken away in Great Hunt.
I will say, I do think that the serving man, Niram, is exaggerating quite a bit the damage. I think there might be just a little bit of like dust and maybe some like surface mildew that can be brushed off, and it's not that big of a deal. You know, because like, yeah, Lopin's like, oh yeah, they're just a little dusty from sitting in the cupboard. And then Niram's like, oh my God, they're the worst. They're rotted. They're terrible. They're never going to come back. And I think it might be the serving man is being like, oh, they're totally ruined. And Lopin's like, they're dusty. Wash them. They're fine.
I'm inclined to believe that Tylan was enough of a fill-in unspeakable slur of choice here that she couldn't like admit that she was ruining his shit by just burning it like an Aes Sedai. She had to like slow destroy his shit.
Yeah, but are Prince Beslin's childhood toys in really like the worst rotting piece of junk? I bet those toys were put away with some reverence. Maybe not in the best spot, but they're probably in a dry trunk somewhere.
I don't know. Definitely you have two serving men with extremely different perspectives on things giving reports here. So
everything is quite filthy, and I'm afraid mildew has ruined several of my lord's best coats. So everything's filthy from
Niram, who's the sad one, the dolorous one.
And then they are dusty, my lord, from... So it's like, yeah, they're dusty because they've been sitting in they spent 2 months sitting in a dusty spot.
Yeah, she couldn't have like put them in like a cardboard box or a plastic dry cleaner bag, Pretty sure they don't have plastic. I don't give a fuck. I expect her to dimension hop if she's going to abuse Matt this bad.
So Matt basically tells them, start taking my clothes and my gold to the Wandering Woman. We've got a place set up, and thinks about the Ashendari, but leaves it behind.
Yeah, it's going to stay with him. That's not going to move until he moves. It's like that. No, right. That stays with him.
And I do like when he actually leaves with it, when he does that thing where he's like, be so ridiculous when you leave that make everyone think you're being a fool about it, but then actually leave. And that's how he takes the Ashendari with him.
He kind of practiced that when he escaped from the White Tower the first time.
Yeah,
the one time he escapes from the White Tower. Mm-hmm. It's like that was a practice round for this. Well, I mean, his whole life was a practice round for this, let's be real. But yeah, and he thinks about how it would be nice to think he has more to look forward to than scars and battles and a wife he doesn't want. But then he gets back down to the getting out of Ebou Dar, because then he can worry about his whole life after that. But it's a moment. It's a moment of introspection that we don't often get from him, where he's like, wow, my life trajectory looks like shit. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, I mean,
he doesn't think in the future that far. Often.
No, and he's also being negative.
Well, he's got a few negative things in front of his face.
Yes, he does. So he sends them off. Tylan sees them running off, and I'm sure figures out exactly what's happening. Right? So fast, right? She knows he's trying to get away. She sees that as one of his strategies, and when he does go, she knows that he's got stuff stored.
I mean, she can read those two body servants. They're like Swan and Leanne, or Ramonda and Lelaine, right? Mm-hmm. Like the two of them, between the two of them, you can tell what's happening based on how they react to things. So if they're both excited about something, it must mean that Matt's finally getting ready to leave, because everything else they're bickering and fighting over who's going to get to do the chore, right? She's a smart woman. Mm-hmm. She's abusive, but she's smart.
Smart. So I imagine there's a certain amount of letting him go at this point.
Beginning to get ready to let him go.
Yeah, right.
Starting to be like, aha, we have reached the apogee of what I get, and I have to, the distance is going to start happening now. Yeah. And also, you'll notice that this is a chapter where Matt is much more enthusiastically he's initiating contact with her at this point, which again points to that inflection point in both Matt's relationship to Tylan and Tylan's relationship to Matt. She's gotten him so used to her that he will now initiate contact, even though the relationship is still under the umbrella of being this abusive, coercive thing. He's now gotten to the point of initiating contact when he wants something, admittedly. He's not doing this because he thinks she's hot. He's doing this because he doesn't want her thinking about Lopin and Niram running down the hallway. But still, it's maybe also a sign to her that, he's going to start leaving soon if he's starting to take a little more agency in the intimacy department.
Fair.
Maybe he's reaching that point. I don't know. I want to give her a lot of credit for reading people at a deep level.
This chapter is a lot of Matt telling us what's happened. We're not seeing a lot of the events. He's like, oh, then Tylan appeared. Then I went and saw a Bellfounder. Then I saw... There's a lot of I did this and then I did this going on with Matt.
It's like a Dear Diary chapter.
Yeah, a little bit. So he goes and visits a Bellfounder after dealing with Tylan.
I've got 2 chapter callbacks in this. I've got pink ribbons and a Bellfounder.
So he finds the Bellfounder, and the Bellfounder doesn't answer any of his questions.
Absolutely
He's like,
useless.
fireworks. Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about. But I think it is really important that Matt sees all the equipment the Bellfounder has.
Oh.
And I think, so there's a description here. I mean, it's a long paragraph about hoisting chains and raging fire and melting bronze and, you know, a square mold half again as tall as a man, great molds that stood around the stone floor amid a litter of small molds in various sizes. The idea that they have the ability to create large molds and melt large amounts of bronze to create cannons, essentially, right? I think that is really important as a clue for what Aludra is trying to do. He's like, what do you need a Bellfounder for? Well, you don't need the final thing, but maybe you need the equipment that they have to make something.
I'd never thought of that, but just getting inside a foundry and looking around like gives his subconscious the ingredients it needs to kind of
You're like, okay, you're not making bells, but what do you need a Bellfounder for? Well, they have this equipment and melting bronze. And what does that create? Well, that creates a really solid lifting tube, as in their parlance, which essentially becomes a cannon.
I like that. I like that a lot.
So even though this dude was completely useless, and we get his name and everything, but we never see him again.
Master Sutoma.
Calwin Sutoma.
Calwin Sutoma. He's casting a victory set over his own big victory bells for a victory over his own city, because assimilation knows no speed limit, I guess.
Hey, if he's getting paid for it, he doesn't care what the bells are for. They're for the ruler of the current ruler of the city, and he's getting paid well for them, and it's an honor.
And more power to you, dude. You get yours.
Right. I mean, it's an opportunity to make, it's like a dream job, right? Imagine if you were like, okay, you have unlimited money to make the best thing you can possibly make. Go.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's worth crossing the picket line if the shiny is shiny enough, I guess.
But I do think it's funny that he completely ignores Matt, who could give him a much bigger, much more important.
I know, right? It's like, you want to be an engineer to take your home country back, or no, you're just going to celebrate being invaded. All right, cool. See ya.
Which leads, again, in his like jumping around the city. The next thing, of course, puts him back with Aludra, because he's thinking about her, and then he's hanging out with her, or at least I'm not really sure what the order of events is here, but he's thinking about her, and then I'm not sure if he's thinking back to a situation where he was hanging out with her in the past, or if he goes and hangs out with her again.
I think they're both happening at the same time, because he tries to visit Sutoma a few times, he visits Aludra multiple times. Like, we're getting a very, very confusing time jumpy kind of space here. Multiple events are collapsing into one vignette in his head.
Right. Yeah, it's more like he's thinking about what he did that day, or over the last couple of days.
Right. But it's like sometimes for the week, sometimes for 2 weeks, sometimes just for a day. Like, it's very scattered. But yeah, this is now the scene where he's just making out in the wagon with Aludra and having, what do you call it? He's having an affair with Aludra.
Yeah, with air quotes, because he's not, in no way has he told Tylan that he's exclusive to her, or that he wants to be in a relationship with her, right? Like he's like completely. How can you cheat on a relationship that you were forced into, right? Like,
you can't. I would say.
This reminds me of the episode of Seinfeld where George tries to break up with his girlfriend, and she just goes, "No, we're not breaking up. Sorry." And the whole episode is about how they're like, she can't do that. And he's like, well, she did. I don't know. I guess we're still dating, right? Like, in this situation, right? Like, Matt is George, right? And can you cheat on that person? Like, you broke up with them.
Right.
You said no, right?
Yeah.
Like,
but I mean, Tylan clearly expects him to be exclusive. I mean, like, she, gets rid of all the even grandmother aged women in the apartment. So that way it's only like great grandmothers doing like the manual labor of keeping her chamber pot clean, which seems totally fine and cool. And we don't need to unpack that in the slightest. But yeah, no, she definitely, I mean, I'm surprised she doesn't have him in a chastity belt. Honestly, that seems like it would be on brand for the city.
Yeah, she can sleep with anyone she wants, right? She's just a toy. She gets to play with multiple toys if she wants. But God, that's her toy. That's not somebody else's toy.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
He's a possession. That's what being a toy is. And possessions don't get shared among multiple people.
No.
Are you kidding? Yeah.
I mean, clearly not at the party she goes to. But it's... So he's having this illicit relationship that is actually something he's consenting to. It is actually something he wants, but it has to be illicit because he's working under the constraints of, like, Tylan may very well get violent with him or his lover if she finds out that he's been having any agency.
I certainly forbid him from seeing her again.
Yeah. And maybe, make that physically impossible because being expelled from the city or something. You never know. So, yeah, it's definitely an affair in the sense that it has to be kept hidden and there are consequences if it gets found out.
I love Eludra's, like, cougar vibe going on here, which is like an older woman sleeping with this younger guy being like, or at least kissing this younger guy being like, I know I shouldn't, but he's just so damn cute. Like,
And again, we get a further reinforcement that Matt is, despite having his consent violated, very consent conscious because Eludra does not allow more than kisses. But she's very enthusiastic about those. So that Matt keeps reaching to go beyond kissing. And she's like, nope.
Nope.
Nope. Because like every now and then, he's going to give it another try because it's been a week or a few days or whatever. And nope. And so, he still understands the concept of consent, even though he doesn't get to exercise it for the most part. And she's just like, he's cute. He's got money. I might need him at some point. And clearly he needs some stress relief. So, yeah, I'll make out with this guy. This is fun.
Right. This is fun. And he's smart, right? He kind of half figured out her little night flower thing. I think there's a lot of respect that she has for him.
It would be nice if she could trust him with a bit more of the engineering secrets so he could get more of like the work colleague intellect respect of them both poring over the plans. But she's inherently too secretive because Illuminator stuff. So it would be very out of character for that. But he's so lucky. Surely you can trust him. It would have been so cool to have scenes of them like crouched over
working
blueprints
together.
And that could have been awesome.
They would have had a fun relationship.
So you want to talk about sticking the knife in the bedpost and how impractical that is for the furniture? I can never get over just like her bedpost must look like it's been chewed by a beaver with all this stabbing. It makes no sense.
She's keeping track. It's like making in prison when they make the marks on the wall for each day.
So she gets a new bed for each pretty she goes through?
I could see that. Yeah.
She's a queen. That's fair.
Yeah, yeah. That's not that out of the question.
Ugh.
But yeah, it's STC Traveler says notches on her belt, right? She's making a notch for every time she's summoned him. So I think that's totally reasonable. I think that's absolutely, you walk in and she's like, there's, this mark is the time we did that, and this mark is the time we did this, and.
Yeah. So this is the part where that happens. She starts stabbing the bedpost, and it becomes a great palace joke that she stabbed the bedpost to summon her sex slave.
But also the fact that, hey, time is limited, right? The bedpost will only hold so many knife sticks. Maybe she realizes that he is on his, verge of leaving because,
I like
turns
that.
out.
That it's part of how she's subconsciously reflecting that she knows that it's finite because now she's going to have like a countable number of.
Exactly.
I like that. That really does support that she tastes the change on the air. We get this line from him where, again, his Overton window has shifted because he now no longer minds being bedded by Tylan or even being, a sub to her dom.
Well, and he's like, I don't like being chased. I don't like being her, mouse by being chased by a cat, right? Like, I want to be the pursuer.
No, he says he's fine with that.
No, aside from the fact.
Oh, wow, that punctuation is funky.
That's definitely referencing a previous chunk of that.
Okay.
Like, he does
All
not
right.
like the fact that he's being, like, he doesn't mind sleeping with her other than the following things: the fact she's a queen, the fact that she's snooty, and the fact that she made him feel like a mouse that had been pet by a cat.
I had nested those punctuation references into each other differently.
Yeah, that's not the best written sentence, definitely.
Okay, yeah, so he's decided he does not like being a sub to her dom. He is definitely not into that sort of thing. He can stand sleeping with her, though. He doesn't mind it in the same way, but he
Right.
also doesn't like it. It's like, it's a job, I guess. Like, I get strong, it's a job, I guess, kind of vibes from the way that he phrases that. And it's not ideal.
I don't mind getting laid. I just don't want to sleep with that person. Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah, it's become just a job rather than like a severely traumatizing event per instance of it happening. But like, that's not good.
There's more speculation about the relationship between Tylan, Suroth, Tuon, and Enoth. And, that all has to do with the fact that he doesn't know Enoth is what a truth speaker is, or the fact that she's forsaken. He doesn't know that Tuon is essentially the Empress, and that Suroth is her subordinate. Yet, because she's under the veil, there's that whole, like, weird, she's not officially.
Right, and so Tylan doesn't know any of that. And Tuon has decided to become friends with Tylan, and that seems to be a very real thing. But Tylan has no idea that she's the daughter of the Nine Moons.
Are you sure about that? I think Tylan is smart enough to have, like, I'm willing to bet that someone whispered that. Like, gosh,
She's under
that's
the
a good
veil.
question. Yeah, but
The Seanchan are only acknowledging her as Tuon. They're not acknowledging her as the daughter of the Nine Moons. None of the Seanchan are acknowledging her as that.
right, but just because Matt can't figure that out doesn't mean that Tylan can't, right? She's not hiding it. She's got the gardeners. She's got the Death Watch guard. She's in this weird sort of, especially in these books, women are able to figure out relationships between women much better than Matt is.
Oh, she can figure out that Tuon is higher ranked, but she doesn't know that Tuon is the actual daughter of the Empress.
I mean, her head's shaved, all of her 10 nails are lacquered, right? Like,
But that's not being explained to Tylan. She's having to pick up, she's top dog, but to what degree? Like, only over everyone else. Like, Tuon is not interacting with the Seanchan as the daughter of the Nine Moons, and so what Tylan gets to pick up on is very fragmentary. So she's able to really skate by missing a lot of what's going on while also being deep inside what's going on, right? Because Tuon, for some fucking reason, decides to make friends with Tylan. It's like something we never see properly on screen. It's just, they're friends now for some fucking reason.
well, because Matt.
Oh, Tuon decides to make friends with Tylan because she's interested in Matt.
Yeah.
I'm not good at politics, in case anyone hadn't noticed that.
But yeah, because of the ring, right? Tylan,
Yeah.
Tuon wants to buy Matt, and she knows that Matt is, essentially the only thing she knows about him is that he's Tylan's toy. So make friends with Tylan to get close to Matt,
To learn about him.
to learn about him, because he may or may not be your future husband, which you just were prophesized about literally the day before you met him.
Right. Yeah. Because we see her stalking him around the palace in this chapter, but I had not connected that to Tylan. I had just thought that the Tylan thing was just a random plot detail rather than.
No,
I disappoint myself.
It's Tuon's stalking of Matt, right? She encountered him randomly, and now she's doing everything she can to run into him, either by hanging out with the woman he belongs to and by following him around the palace, apparently.
Yep. It's very weird. But yeah, there's a lot of him just thinking about all of that and not putting it together, and it's cool. Next thing I've got is when he goes into Tylan's apartments and notices her there. Notices Tuon there examining the Ashenvara. Because first of all, he makes sure to not go to Tylan's apartments until he's sure that she's not there. Which again, he's real into being with her. So into it. Super, super into it.
Found that Tylan was shut up with Suroth or some business or another, and then he goes back to the bedchamber.
Yeah. But he goes there to be alone, I guess, and discovers Tuon is there fondling his spear. I mean, fingering his shaft. I mean, handling the stick. Yeah.
Right, and stroking his ravens.
Yeah.
Touching his wood. Which again reinforces the prophecy, right? Like the prophecy that be careful, the fox that makes the ravens fly, right?
How does the Ashendari fit into that?
It's got the ravens on there flying.
But the fox that makes the ravens fly is his ring.
That's true.
I think she's more intrigued by the fact that it's written in the old tongue and has ravens on it. I don't think it's actually part of the prophecy. It's just something that's interesting about him. Just because the ring perfectly covers that bit of prophecy.
I guess it does, yeah. Ravens
are just really interesting, right, to the Imperials, right? Like, it doesn't have to be part of the prophecy to be attractive. Like, why do you have a special artifact with ravens on it?
Do we ever figure out why the Ashendari has 2 ravens on it, other than the memory?
Because he's Odin.
Yeah, I mean, other than him being Odin, right? Is there any in-world?
No. I mean, thought and memory are critical to the Odin thing.
And those are the names of the... That's in the poem.
And
it's, yeah.
I'm saying that wrong, but their names mean thought and memory. And the 2 ravens are, thought is the memory of time, thought is the arrow of time, memory never fades. Like, so I cannot think of a single in-world reason. It's entirely the Odin archetype being reinforced. Hugin and Munin, thank you. It wasn't Mangan. It's an in-world name. I should know this better. I like Norse stuff, but words are hard.
Also, context matters.
She would have been beautiful if she ever stopped looking as though she was about to bite off a mouthful of wood. Is a really funny line to read after we were making all the sexual innuendo jokes. Because RJ did not mean it as innuendo.
Are you sure about that?
It's in a sentence where he says she would look beautiful if she didn't look like she was going to bite wood. Which makes me think he didn't mean it as an innuendo. But yeah, he thinks about how she's totally unkissable, which is just, all right, yeah. Think that for another week, and then you're going to start wanting to kiss her. Right,
yeah. It's just like, this his description of Tuon now versus later when he actually falls in love with her, it's just night and day. Completely night and day.
Yeah. And he also, his entire taste in women changed. He's like, I want women with hair that are tall and that have curves. And then he falls in love with Tuon. He's like, I don't want any hair. Definitely want you to be like tiny little itty bitty and skinny as hell.
Yeah, I want you to fit in right next to me. I want to be able to put an arm around you.
And here he's like, if there's nothing to put an arm around, what's the point? And then later he's like, I want most of my arm to just be wrapping empty space. Right, just stab me with those shoulder blades. Stab me. It's so funny that he is such an exclusive dater, right? If he is going to be with someone, he is going to be with that person and absolutely be loyal to them. And yet his entire taste in admiring women changes in a response.
He has a type.
I hope that he can go be his pansexual swinger self someday.
Yeah.
And yeah, she just tries to buy the Ashendari for 10 times the price, and he's like, I am a cat. I only have 9 lives. You cannot pay 10 lives. That would literally not make sense.
Yeah. But yeah, the fact that he died, he was hung for the Ashendari. He died. I think at this point he thinks that he died, right? That's the death that, you will die and live again. Because he doesn't know about the balefire death.
No. And I mean, most people would consider coming back from drowning and a heart attack to be close enough to count as death. Like, it's a fair assumption. He's wrong. The balefire is the one that actually breaks him from the horn. But
people say that all the time when they get out of the doctor. It's like, oh yeah, I died for 2 minutes on the table there because my heart stopped or whatever. And it's like, you didn't die. Your heart just stopped. That's just like, it's not the definition of death anymore.
Our ways of measuring life ceased to function for a bit. But clearly you came back to life, which isn't a thing. So you didn't die. It's medical terminology around death is fascinating.
Yeah, I will say it's got to be a lot easier to spoon somebody who doesn't have hair.
Yeah, my hair's starting to get long enough that Brandon's like, can you move that? And it's just short enough that like it barely will stick under my head and then it pops out again. It's at a very inconvenient length right now.
Oh, it's the flyaways that get me. The hair will be down, but there's like one flyaway that just like, oh, that's going up my nose. Oh, I didn't realize I was snorting hair tonight. Like,
yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal. Hair is best removed.
There's something to be said for a bald chick.
It's very low maintenance.
Very low maintenance.
I mean,
trust me, I know.
Yeah. It's bald chicks are hot, and it gives you lots of time to spend more time staring at hot chicks, which is fine.
The following stuff is all about her just like popping up around corners and being in rooms that he didn't expect her to be in, and like being outside a room when he goes to leave. Like this, like, I feel like I did this in high school when I had a crush on a girl. I'd like figure out her schedule and like make excuses to, you know, be going in the opposite direction of whatever hallway I know she'd be walking down. I feel like I did that all the time in high school when I had a crush. And so like this is totally to me Tuon having a crush.
It's an obsessive fascination, like nothing else is really happening. Like, now I need to find out more. But like the second that he notices her, like, nope, like a cat that just fell over. Like, nope, I meant to do that. I have no idea. What?
Yep.
What? It would be cute if not for the part where the only time she ever talks to him, it's to be like, can I buy you? Can I buy your stuff? Now you don't exist. Like, it would be cute if she would ever say anything nice to him. Because, I mean, she's got prophecies to deal with. Like, it makes sense that she stalks him a bit. Like, fundamentally, like, he's an interesting person and she has all kinds of reasons to expect that he's going to be a big part of her future. Like, it makes sense to do some recon. It just would be nice if she didn't have nothing nice to say to him ever before starting that process.
Yeah, and Tuon's, I feel like, in a very weird place, right? She's killed a man, but she's probably never kissed one. Right? She's had death threats her whole life. She's this very mature, dealing with very adult politics type thing, except when it comes to love. She's had zero experience with that whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, she probably, like, kissed a Daco Vale once to, like, find out what it was like, you know, in a very, like, clinical, like, academic, let's see what this is sort of way. Like, yeah, she's never looked at a person to have a crush, much less, like, had any kind of relationship, even an unrequited one. Like, I don't think she's ever even had an unrequited relationship.
Agreed. Yeah, no, this is new territory for her, which is also why she's so very bad at it.
Yeah, no, she's approaching this like some sort of like stodgy politician, and it's like, you're a teenager trying to like hook up. Like, that's
right.
not gonna work.
I know. And she's like, I will need treaties, and it's like, no, that's not what's going on.
I mean, you do need enthusiastic consent, which does involve a conversation, which is kind of like a treaty, but like, yeah, approaching it with a militaristic attitude is not gonna work.
And like, if you think about it, Seanchan has been with her every adult moment of her life. That's basically her mother.
Yeah, I mean, Seanchan has raised her effectively.
Right. But so, like, where's her independence from her quote-unquote mother, right? She doesn't have any chance to...
Yeah.
No, she literally has to flirt and, you know, engage in this relationship with her first boyfriend in front of her mother's eyes, with her mother, and I'm using, you know, mother loosely here, but, you know, the woman who raised her is watching every single moment of her courtship. That's not awkward.
No, that's not awkward at all. Yeah, you're raised by staff to be a consummate politician and your own last line of self-defense, and now you're expected to figure out flirting with a man from a completely different culture. Yeah, no wonder she's so reserved, because, like, when in doubt, silence is your best weapon, right? People will think you're smarter and wiser if you don't make a fool of yourself. So, like, she has to hold herself very still in order to negotiate any of this with any kind of grace. I do have a lot of sympathy for her. She does not have an easy hand of cards to play.
And so, again, this is a bit of a confusing timeline because, again, it's just over time, bit by bit, half the contents of the ironbound chest under Tylan's bed traveled across the Malhara to the hidden hollow beneath Theon's kitchen. Is that a week? Is it a couple of days? Is it a month? Right? Like, we have this time that passes before he goes back to the Wandering Woman, and it's not obvious to me how much time has passed.
Yeah, I just glanced ahead to the start of the next chapter to see if there was a line about a time interval, and I didn't see anything. This is very, very mushy time. He talks about, like, his latest visit to Aludra, so, like, is that of 3 visits, of 13 visits? Like, does he go every day, every other day? Like, what? RJ is giving himself a lot of whisker bars on his data, so that way he can massage Matt's timeline into the others wherever it needs to be.
And I feel like we did have an event, and I can't remember what it was in a previous chapter, that nailed down the timeline of when this whole sequence started. Right, when the day the golem attacked him, the day of the return, all that day was nailed down in time.
Yeah,
but I don't know how much time it's been since that day.
Yeah, and I don't know how much time it is from then until the next firm point in the timeline.
Because that day we knew exactly how many days after Rand's attack on the Seanchan.
I think it was 6 days.
Or 9?
Something like that. But we got a very specific number of days, and that's the day that Tuon arrives and the golem attacks. And then we get a much fuzzier space. And then I think the next concrete event is a week or more out from this ephemeral spot that we're currently at.
Right, yeah. But again, this whole book is a fairly short period of time. I think a month from start to finish is what is what the timeline says.
That sounds right.
Just because all these books are about like other than I think book 7 was 10 days or something like that, and then and then these last couple of books are about a month before the last battle, and then the last battle is just depending on where you are, it could be months, could be days.
The last battle is a amount of time.
Yes, yes, time does pass, but that's not what's happening here. So I think that basically. And because the characters come in chunks, right? We get a chunk of Perrin, then a chunk of Elaine, and then a chunk of Matt, and then a chunk of Rand, and then I think we get some of Egwene, and then back to Rand. But each of those characters, I think, experiences a month over the course of their chunk of chapters.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense, yeah. But yeah, he has a great plan and then starts second-guessing it because he needs to gather more people into his party. And that's the only way to do it, is to have him second-guess his own extremely watertight plan for no particularly good reason.
Well, they just need a reason to get him back to the Wandering Woman. Which, I don't know, checking in on your stash doesn't seem like an unreasonable amount of...
Yeah, it seems reasonable to me, but he makes a big deal about how he doesn't know why he's doing it. And it's like, clearly Ta'Veren, but like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's why he's doing it now.
Sure,
This was my thing. But yeah, he's worried about someone stealing it because it's literally just hidden under a stone in the ground. Once he gets there, though, it's this very much like, no one's going to pick up a random stone in a kitchen. Like, that was such a good freaking hiding spot. I don't know what I'm doing. And yeah, again, Ta'Veren is probably the answer.
It's because he needs to get bumped into Jolene. It's just necessary.
And so that's the pattern, pulling at his heartstrings and saying, worry about your money. You need to be there.
Yeah, because he's actually a Ferengi and his heart is made of gold.
But yeah, so that sets us up for Matt to be a hero and set up the rest of the sort of Ebou Dar-y Matt leaving and escaping and setting the Seanchan free plotline.
Seafolk.
He
puts the Seanchan into quite a bind, actually.
Yes, yeah, he does.
But yeah, it's mid-Matt. We're just midway through Matt in Ebou Dar, and there's some fun world building and some real cringe plot arc stuff. So thanks for bearing with us.
Just wait till next book. Before I start the readout, there was one other thing I wanted to say. Mm-hmm. We do get an image of the crystal throne on the back of the coin.
Yeah, like a Roman coin or something. It's awesome. It's so awesome.
It's a big, thick chair.
Yeah, this like gnarly woman's face on one side and this imposing throne on the other. And yeah, it's definitely the Empress and the Crystal Throne. Absolutely.
Even Tuon could not truly upset his welling sense that things were finally coming right, though. The golem did not return, and began to think maybe it had gone on an easier harvest. In any event, he was staying away from dark and lonely places where it might have a chance at him. His medallion was all very well for what it did, but a good crowd was better. On his latest visit to Aludra, she'd almost let something slip, he was certain of it, before coming to herself and hastily bundling him out of her wagon. There was nothing a woman would not tell you if you kissed her long enough. He stayed away from the wandering woman to avoid arousing Tylan's suspicions. But Naram and Lopin stealthily transferred his real clothing to the inn's cellar. Bit by bit, half the contents of the iron-bound chest under Tylan's bed traveled across the Malhara to the hidden hollow beneath the inn's kitchen. That hollow under the kitchen floor began to trouble him, though. It had been good enough for hiding the chest. A man could break chisels getting into that. He had been living upstairs at the inn then, too. Now the gold would just be spilled into the hole after Satala cleared the kitchen. What if someone began to wonder why she chased everybody out when Lopin and Naram came? Anybody at all could lift up that floor stone if they knew where to look. He had to make sure for himself. Afterwards, long afterwards, he would wonder why the bloody dice had not warned him.
Honestly, that's a good question. It's a really fateful moment. Taviran is definitely hugely to blame. Why are the dice not involved?
Because they're obsessed with Tuon. And that really has very little to do with Tuon. He's met her, like... I don't know. I'm not really sure why he, we can talk about the dice all day, like what they warn him about. What they seem to, for a while, warn him just about Tuon. Like, that seems to, like, in the beginning, they seem to be about battles, and then for a while, they're just about Tuon. And then the last battle happens, and they're about battles again. Yeah,
it's very interesting. I don't know. It's a little frustrating. I could do with slightly more internal consistency.
Yeah, on what the dice are and what they do. And hell, where they come from, right? Like, we never get any sort of answer. I like the speculation that it was something Lanfear did, but, you know, is it just Taviran warning him? Is that part of him being cool Taviran? You know, I think Matt's unique in that his powers directly come from being Taviran more so than Perrin's or Matt's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's more directly tied into the nature of what's going on there.
Right. Because Perrin, his Taviran makes him a wolf brother, but then his powers really are about being a wolf brother. Everything from him, you know, getting into the Teleron Riyadh in the flesh, to talking to wolves, to being the Wolf King, that all seems to be part of being a wolf brother. You almost never, maybe his leadership skills are sort of his intangible, people want to follow him type thing as Taviran. Yeah, that's what all the people around him blame or attribute to his Taviranness, is people's willingness to quickly become followers. And maybe, you know, Rand, we see him get, you know, super Taviran at the end of the series once he, you know, comes down from the mountain. But most of his powers are in being a channeler. Yeah. Whereas Matt's powers, a lot of them just come from literally being Taviran, right? All of his luck, the dice rolls, that's just, as far as I can tell, pure Taviranness. I like what Lilligen's putting in chat, is that maybe the dice are thought and memory, because we know memory. We know what his memories are. So what's the thought? If he got thought and memory, if we're going with the Odin thing, we know what the memories are. What's thought? What if the dice are thought? I don't really know how dice and thought are at all the same thing, but it's such a weird, mysterious thing. Like, maybe that's thought. Well, he asked for those holes in his head to be filled. He didn't say with what. Maybe thought and memory are the two things they stuck in his head. I always assumed it was just memory, but I mean, thoughts are also traditionally a thing you find in people's heads. Yeah, just not Matt's. Well, apparently now there are thoughts if you just shove dice in there. Right. Okay. Yeah. Maybe that's the other half of his memories is the dice. Yeah, because it's just so... There's no Aes Sedai explanation. There's no Terangrial explanation. There's nothing. It's like the Horn of Valir levels of unexplained. So blame the Finn. Like, I mean, it's... sure. Why not? And what if the dice are like
how you can tell that the Finn are like tapping in. Maybe it's like a little GPS tracker on his psyche. Whenever he does something interesting, it like vibrates the phone on their coffee table, you know? Their little Finn coffee table.
Yeah, I think they're watching more than that, though.
Yeah, probably. But maybe it has some. It's got to have something to do with this connection with the Finn. Somewhere in one of his requests, they put dice in his head.
I think the only issue with that is the dice are in his head before he goes through the first Terangrial. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it all post-dated, the dice or the doors.
Because as far as I can tell, it's that he's got the dice in his head after his one lucky night, which is
you're right. Oh, that is before the doors. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And that is, I think, part of why the Lanfear theory exists, right? Because Lanfear, like, is messing around with him. And
she's got that, and she may have had access to that 5 dice Terangrial that disappeared.
Which has no explanations ever given whatsoever. It has something to do with twisting odds. And, okay, so it's not the Finn. It's not right. Shit.
That's why we always ruled out the Finn, because the timing doesn't really work.
Right. It so much more makes sense that somehow Lanfear, like, bonded him to a luck-manipulating Terangrial in some weird way.
But there's a good point that, like, you know, the Finn seemed to be able to see forward and backwards in your timeline, so maybe the dice happened pre-doorway because the Finn were still connected to him because he would go through the doorway in the future.
No, because he doesn't get memories from before men go through the doorway.
That's right. Yeah, that's why he has no children's memories, because no children go through the doorway.
Right. They can't see that far backward. They have a very wibbly-wobbly relationship to time, but not quite that flexible.
Right, but they can only see forward from the moment you cross through the doorway.
Yeah.
Or at least make a deal with them, you know.
But it would be really appropriate for the foxes to have somehow done it, given that the snakes gave him memories.
And then we go back to the penny polish theory that we haven't talked about in a minute, right? Like,
yeah.
The whole thing with the dice and the luck and all that, all the luck started after he was healed from the dagger. So are the dice and the dagger, well, that's the Dark One's luck. Did that maybe come from, you know, I talk about how Fane is the bad luck and Matt's the good luck, and Fane is always going to, you know, have the worst things happen to him because, you know, between the two of them, they have the same luck. One's just bad, the other's good. They're two sides of the same coin. And so maybe Matt's luck is more related to the dagger and the bad luck of Shatter Logoth, and the fact that two people are linked to the dagger, one being Fane, one being Matt. And so they're two halves of the same coin.
Yeah. It totally could be. Or maybe it's just that this is how Ta'Viren feels for Matt, right? And it's just like everyone's brain interprets data in its own way. And like Matt and Perrin have their experience, and Matt's experience is very much, he's framing it differently and experiences it differently.
And he is the gambler. He's not just a gambler. He is the gambler, right? Like
his archetypal existence is going to be framed in terms of gambling tools, in terms of gambling metaphors. Like that's just how he will always see the world.
Right. So yeah, a debate about Matt's dice is always fun to have.
That's fun.
Man, yeah.
Fun little rattle that around.
That's more of an early book debate that we used to have a lot, you know, as to exactly when we had a lot more evidence when that luck was coming out and the memories were coming out and the dice were first happening. Now it's old hat and old school. And also, I think after this time, it's more, I feel like it's being used a little more inconsistently. Just Robert Jordan's using it when he wants to rather than...
Yeah.
I don't know if he really got it solid in his head as to what the dice were all about.
No, but it's okay because Matt is his chaos character, so he can shove all kinds of weird stuff onto Matt and just hand wave it because that's who Matt is.
He is the Joker. Yeah. In this situation,
he's chaotic neutral, right? Like he's just chaos. He's delightful. Well, this has been really fun.
That was a fun little recording.
Yeah. So
thank you.
Thanks to you, and thanks to our audience. Thanks to our patrons.
Especially our patrons. Thank you.
I hope you guys are all enjoying the deep dives that are coming out.
You're done editing those, right? I
am done editing them. They are coming out for the rest of November, and then we're done with that bonus content. The one that came out today is episode 6 part 2, and that is when I start getting cranky. That right there at the end of episode 6 is when the Waygate opens. You and I both have such strong negative opinions about different parts of that is the moment when we go from this unbridled high of joy, and then very end of episode 6, we're both just like, and then we just rip episode 7 and 8 up one side and down the other. It is a marked inflection point. And so, everyone, you're about to get Seth and Aradia not having 101% enthusiasm for the show pretty soon here.
It's one of the reasons why I do have high hopes for season 2. Is because I did like the first 5.5 episodes of the show. I wanted more of it, but then obviously the pandemic happened and they lost Matt. They lost a year. They lost continuity.
They lost the ability to do a lot of the scenes they wanted for social distancing reasons.
A lot of money had to be spent on COVID precautions rather than special effects, right? Like, all sorts of shit went down. And am I massively disappointed that they produced 2 crap episodes rather than figuring out how to do it well? Yes. Am I very unhappy with them? Absolutely. Do I think they can pull it together for season 2? And do I think 2 bad episodes absolutely ruin a TV show? No.
No. This is a very forgivable offense. You can absolutely recover. But, oh boy, guys, the tone of those episodes you're getting is about to change for the rest of this month.
Oh, well, I have opinions.
Yes, and I did not edit them. So...
Yeah. Oh, boy.
Actually, honestly, I got so good at my process that I did actually edit a few things out of the last 2 episodes. Okay. There was a couple where I'm just like, okay, all right, we're going to slow down just enough to pull that out. That was not necessary. Just a couple. I got pretty familiar with my routine by the time we got to the last 2.
Oh, man, I don't even want to know what had to get pulled out. If you're willing to stop that.
Well, I don't remember, honestly. There was one where you actually said, I want to cut that because we had gotten way off on a technical tangent, and it was really easy to be like, oh yeah, no, that. But anyway, rest of November is going to be a little spicy, and then you're going to be back to 1 episode a week, unless we decide to make more bonus content, which I don't think we're going to do. So,
we've talked about doing something for the show. It won't be visual.
Well, we don't know when the show's coming out, so
no, right? Clearly,
it won't be coming out in December.
Yeah, right. No,
you guys are going to be down to 1 episode a week starting in December again. Who knows, though? Next year, maybe something will be happening.
I'm actually kind of astonished at this point that we haven't gotten any announcement about release date for season 2.
I'm really surprised. I totally thought End of Rings of Power was going to be a nice little, here's the information you need to tide yourselves over. And getting nothing has been very odd.
Not even a teaser, really, or a trailer. But even a release date at the end of, hey... Rings of Power is over. Go watch season 1 of Wheel of Time. Season 2 comes out. Blah. I feel like we have a season 2 release date for Rings of Power already.
Right?
Yeah. I'm almost certain that they announced the release date of season 2 before they ended season 1. And here we are nearly a year after season 1 ended of Wheel of Time, and we still don't have a season 2 release date.
It makes me wonder what's going on behind the scenes that is preventing them from having a date to give us. It's hard for me to imagine that this is all one decision that has had no bumps along the way.
My completely uninformed guess is that everyone who's working on the CGI for Wheel of Time got pulled off to help the Rings of Power CGI finish. And that they basically delayed the release of Wheel of Time to make Rings of Power happen.
Given how well the halo effect has been working, I can see why that decision would feel justified. I'm annoyed about it, but the halo effect drives the bottom dollar decisions, so...
Right.
And I do want to emphasize, guys, there is a lot of happiness in all of our critiques of 7 and 8. It's just we liked the parts we liked so much that we really ripped the parts that we didn't like a lot. It's not it's just 2 hours of us hating it. There is a lot of positive stuff that we have to say. It's just we were holding back everything that we didn't like before because we wanted to hold it out. They're going to fix it in 7 and 8. And so you get the payoff of a lot of our hopes from the preceding episodes. You get a lot of the payoffs, which is us being God damn it. So,
They didn't do X, Y, and Z that we thought they were going to do. Yeah. So it wasn't just the stuff that happened in 7 and 8. It was the stuff that
Yeah,
didn't happen in 7 and 8.
It's, I mean, everyone obviously make your own choices. Like it's definitely content that is spicy, but.
And I don't think it's a crazy thing to say the last 2 episodes weren't as good as the rest of the season.
No, I am very interested to see if we get any responses from people being like, "Oh my God, someone said it," or "You finally hate it, yay!" I'm so curious because we were really pinning a lot of our hopes on 7 and 8 when we were pushing aside our concerns in the first 6.
I remember that. I remember going into 7 and 8 talking to Nabes about it. Him being like, yeah, I mean, they've really, at this point, I'm at like a 7.5 out of 10, and how the last 2 episodes go could put me down to a 5 or up to a 9, you know, and like there's there's a lot of things that are riding on the last 2 episodes being good.
Yeah.
And because they weren't, a lot of the stuff that was earlier in the season that could have paid off and could have been really good wasn't.
It'd be nice to know when to get excited for the next season.
Yeah, it would be nice to know. It would be nice to know. But time, I guess we're just waiting. I've got 6 pints of my whiskey. I'm actually down to 6 pints of whiskey. So that's, I know, I'll have to start making some more. So honestly, I've drank very little of it. Most of it's almost all gifts.
Yeah, Brandon said it was really good.
It is really good.
He got to sample at SpoilerCon because, I'm not a whiskey drinker, but he was like, man, it sucks that you're not a whiskey drinker because that stuff is good.
No, that's, I'm very proud of it. It's all corn, or all grain, I should say. It's 50% corn, 50% wheat. But I'm using natural enzymes. I'm not adding enzymes. I'm not adding any sugar. I'm using beer yeast. The whole distillation process is one of those things where it's like, I'm doing double distillation where commercially it doesn't make sense to make whiskey like that because it would be, $1,000 a bottle. The amount of effort and work.
And it tastes like it should cost $1,000 a bottle. Right. So,
and so you really just can't get whiskey like that. And so I'm very proud of it and it's very delicious. And I'm going to keep making it because God damn, it's good. And it makes great gifts. It's like I can give this to anybody, and who's 90% of people appreciate whiskey. Well, maybe that's exaggerating a little bit, but 90% of the people in my life who I want to give gifts to appreciate whiskey.
Yeah. And as someone who appreciated whiskey last year will appreciate it next year. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
That's a gift that absolutely you can keep giving and it will never get old.
Nobody's like, no, don't give me any more.
That's boring.
Yeah. I had one coworker say, you cannot give me any more. I will get in trouble.
That's different.
I cannot not drink that, and that's a problem for me. So yeah, there's that. But it's fun. But I have to go buy 100 pounds of grain. So that's right now what's keeping me from doing it more is just going to stores and picking up 2 50-pound pounds of grain, 50-pound bags of grain. I know it's not Tam's hard apple cider, but or brandy, because this thing is okay. Let's bring it back to the books. Tam makes brandy, right? Brandy is a distilled drink, is it not?
Yes, distilled wine.
Oh, if it's apple brandy, they're growing apples and making it's distilled cider.
Still, though, he needs to have a distillery.
He does have to have a distillery. Yes,
he absolutely has a distillery that he's managed to not blow himself up with.
Yes,
at least not fatally. I mean, who knows how many times he's had to rebuild that barn, but.
All I'm saying is, I bet Rand has a badass apple brandy recipe.
Which also means that in principle, Rand could cobble together a bomb pretty easily. He should know the basic principles of what not to do with a still.
Right, seal it up. Ooh,
yeah, it's like, just don't let the pressure escape, and now you've got an offensive weapon.
I imagine it would be hard to make something where the pressure couldn't escape.
Yeah, that's true.
Where it would you'd pop a seam and then you'd end up with,
Easier to sabotage a still than to take those principles into a full-on creation of a bomb.
All right, so you want to get started on this chapter?
Yeah. Let's do this.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?